Welcome to another edition of Who's Better Baseball, the podcast where we answer a simple question on each show. Who's better at baseball? I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein, managing editor at justbaseball.com, and I wrote an article today for the site that I just had to hop on and do a show about too because this AL race is awesome. You look at the NL wildcard race right now, and you have the Marlins and the Cubs in a battle to see who will be less futile down the stretch to make the playoffs. And I might be a little bit harsh by saying that because, look, those are two good teams that deserve to be in the playoffs based on the war of attrition and how they perform throughout the year. With that said, these are teams that are not going to finish better than 85 wins, okay? You look at the American League, and the American League right now is a testament to why the third wild card is important and why ultimately it's worth it to have it because you'll get a race like this where three teams in one division could make the playoffs, where one team who wins, upwards of 87, 88, potentially 89 games is going to miss the playoffs. I mean, we've seen the Phillies and the Brewers make the playoffs and do so convincingly in the National League. It would be like if one of those teams missed the playoffs. I think there's a different tier, right? There's the American League teams. There's the Braves and the Dodgers that might be a tier above those American League teams. I don't know. The Orioles, the Rays, they're right there, maybe in that tier A. But like, when it really comes down to, when you're looking at these playoff teams, there's some separation between the back end of the NL wildcard race and the American League wildcard race in those playoff teams. And so now you look at where things stand, and this is a crazy weekend of baseball we have in front of us, and it started with a crazy game on Thursday night. The Mariners were this close to being in a massive hole with this many games left to play. They can't lose anymore, really. I mean, they can, but then other teams have to lose. And even if they win out, there's a chance the Mariners don't make the playoffs. The Mariners could win every single game this weekend. And if the Astros do the same and the Blue Jays take care of business as well, they might be sitting in a position where they tie with this same Rangers team they're playing right now. And the Rangers have done the hard work on that throughout the season, already winning the season series. And the Rangers would make the playoffs. That's one scenario of many that we'll get to throughout this show. But Seattle is in that spot where it's almost like put the pencils down, stop doing the math, just win every game and hope that it works out for you, right? Well, in a game like that, this one goes down to the wire. It is Jordan Montgomery, the big trade acquisition for the Rangers, I guess the second big trade acquisition for the Rangers at the deadline, with Max Scherzer being the guy that they thought would be pitching in games like this. But Montgomery delivered. 6 innings, allowed just 1 run on a solo homer by Julio Rodriguez. On the other side, Logan Gilbert, he gives up 2 solo homers. And so with that, the Mariners are sitting on the verge of elimination. Not elimination, that's too hard. On the verge of being 2 games back from the Astros and 3 back, I believe. I have to keep checking these standings to how crazy this race is. Yeah, there would have been 3 games back on the Blue Jays, who they do have the tiebreaker on, but then with 3 left to play, you need them to just completely fall on their face, which could happen because they're playing the Tampa Bay Rays. Another great series this weekend where Tampa doesn't really have anything to play for. They're now locked into the first wild card spot with the Orioles winning the AL East. But would they like to maybe make it hard on the Blue Jays? I think so. No one wants to see their division rival in the playoffs. So there's that going on. They would have been 3 games back. That's tough. 2 games back on the Astros. They have the tiebreaker, but that's putting a lot of pressure on the Diamondbacks to beat the Astros, which is funny because now the Diamondbacks are sitting in the other league and they still potentially could get knocked out of this thing. They're sitting in the driver's seat against the Marlins and the Cubs. They're 1.5 up on the Marlins, 2 games up on the Cubs. But you still don't know, okay, how it all will end up shaking out. So that's a crazy series. Again, getting back to this nuts game on Thursday night. The Mariners are down to their final out, but it takes a while to get there because Aroldis Chapman takes the ball, 9th inning. He gives up a couple hits, throws a wild pitch, walks about it to load the bases. They pull the hook on him. They get him out of there. Jonathan Hernandez comes in for the Rangers, gets 2 big outs. Outs that don't score a run. Bases loaded, 2 outs, J.P. Crawford comes up. A guy that we wrote an article about a couple weeks ago now about how he's just put it all together this season. He has rewarded the Mariners' faith in him. Well, he does so in the biggest moment, hitting a double and driving into to walk it off and not only keep the Mariners squarely in the race, but really heighten things across the board. Because now they're sitting a game back of Houston, 2 games back of Toronto. The Rangers would have made the playoffs if they won that game. They might not have clinched the division yet because the Astros have the tiebreaker over them. And that's where this thing gets so crazy. The Astros have the tiebreaker over the Rangers. The Mariners have the tiebreaker over the Astros. And then the Rangers have the tiebreaker over the Mariners. So it goes a bunch of different ways. The funny thing is, when it comes to the Seattle Mariners, in a 3-way tie situation, they would have to now, because they're sitting here looking up at a Rangers team that has 89 wins and they have 86. They would have to sweep them in this 4-game set, win the final 3 games this weekend to tie. If the Astros won 2 of 3 against the Diamondbacks, they would have 89 wins as well. And then in the 3-team tiebreaker, the team that has the best record, and that's in the 3-way head-to-head, so it's who has the best combined record against the other 2 teams, Seattle would win the division. And then it goes to the Astros, and it goes to the Rangers. And then where are the Blue Jays at? The Blue Jays this weekend win 2 of 3. Then they'd be sitting at 90 wins, and then it comes right back down to the original tiebreaker between the Astros and the Rangers, where the Rangers will get eliminated. But there's a million things that can happen. The Mariners could just fall out of it, and then it doesn't matter. And then it's just Blue Jays, Astros at the bottom of the wild card. Rangers win the division, which is where we're sitting right now. And I guess theoretically that's still the most likely outcome, because if the Rangers win 1 game this weekend, they're at 90 wins. The Astros could sweep and still end up grabbing the division from them, but if they get to 90 wins, the Mariners aren't catching them. So that's how that would unfold. They could win 1 game. The Mariners could win the next 2 after that. The Astros could take 1 of the 3 games against the Diamondbacks, and then that head-to-head would go to the Mariners, depending on where the Blue Jays fall into it. It is just a crazy, crazy end to this season. But if you're a Seattle Mariners fan, the only thing you can hope for at this point is that they win every game. And that's where I think all these teams have to be. Yeah, there's a chance that the Astros are going to get just completely boat raced by the Diamondbacks, and they'll finish with 87 wins. They'll finish 87 and 75, and they'll be the team that falls out of it. There's every chance the Rays will beat up on the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays will finish at the exact 88 win mark they're at right now, and if Houston wins 1, if Seattle wins a couple, all of a sudden they're out of it. Teams are sitting here just trying to survive day by day. And that's what you got to do. And so Seattle, with their backs against the wall, down to their final out, J.P. Crawford, if he doesn't come up big in that moment, well, then we're just looking at this weekend and saying it's not that exciting. We're going into this weekend saying, man, well, now the Mariners, even if they win every single game, that would just bring them even to the Blue Jays by season's end. And that would just bring them, right up against where the Astros would be if they only win 1 more game. So that win last night was a massive, massive thing for the Mariners. But with each day, the race could get crazier or could get settled. And that's what we have left to watch. I mean, as much as you might want to watch Marlins Pirates this weekend, I don't know if that's the series people are going to tune in for. Maybe Cubs Brewers can excite some people because, hey, the Brewers can knock the Cubs out of the playoffs. But the Cubs aren't in the driver's seat anymore. So the playoff race is one that, again, with the third wild card, there's always going to be that question, like, is it too many teams? Like last year, when we saw the race play out, well, the Phillies were that final wild card team. Look where they ended up. That proved that, hey, these teams that can make it through this gauntlet and grab one of these spots, they're worthy, right? They're worthy of being in October. But still, even with that, you're looking at the teams this year and you say, all right, well, what if we expand it to 14 teams? What would that look like? And in a sense, it would be good because, hey, all these great teams in the American League, they make it. But then you'd probably have a team in the National League that shouldn't make it. And there might be a team that should make it already. So I think right now Major League Baseball has this right. They have the right amount of teams. They have mostly the right rules. I might argue about the seeding of the playoffs and how you're rewarding division winners too much. Like, it would be fun if the Brewers and the Phillies right now still had home field advantage to be well, I guess they're both going to get home field advantage, but seeding to play for at least, right? Where the Phillies, maybe they'd prefer to play the Marlins over the D-backs, and so they could be battling it out for that down the stretch. I mean, those are little things that could be tweaked, but we're getting what you'd want. If before the season someone had wrote out the script and the teams might not be what we thought they would be, the guy says with a Mets flag behind his head. But in that alternate reality where you are handed the script before the season and you look and, oh wow, in the final weekend, the Mariners, the Rangers, and the Astros are all going to be in a position where anyone can win the division, anyone can make the wild card, and anyone can be eliminated from the playoffs, or all three can still make it. I think you sign up for that theater. Anyway, that's going to be all for today's edition of Who's Better Baseball. Next week, we're going to do a series preview for each of the wild card rounds. Myself and Elijah Evans, we're going to get together on Monday, sort of go through it all, release them as shorter videos. So make sure you hit the subscribe button on this YouTube channel if you want to get any of those updates, or you can follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you check out all the great written content will come your way at justbaseball.com, including the article that this episode today was based. And yeah, let's watch how this race unfolds this weekend.